everybody. My name is Lacie Thorne. I'm an executive MBA candidate at Yale University with a focus on sustainability. And my path to an MBA program was not traditional. I actually was a celebrity fashion designer before I came to school. My background is working with Jennifer Lopez for Kohl's, Nicki Minaj for Sears, and Adam Levine for Kmart under the leadership of Tommy Hilfiger. He was my boss. And in these huge rollouts, we would go to the artist's home, go into their closet, work with the artist to develop the direction of the line, but then ultimately juxtapose that experience by immediately going over to the factories in overseas locations to oversee the production. And because the scale of these rollouts was so big, I got to see production facilities for garment apparel that was at a scale that I wasn't previously familiar with. It was huge. And I remember being in a factory one day. We were creating an order of neon pink jeans for Jennifer Lopez, and the order unit was about 60,000 pairs of neon pink jeans. And I saw so many pairs of neon pink jeans that the concept of jeans just stopped making sense in my mind. They were everywhere. And I realized that this was one order for one brand within one store within the entire global apparel supply chain. And we were using resources to grow the cotton for the jeans, neon pink dye for the color, and using human labor to create the garments, put them on a boat, ship them to America, truck them all over the United States, where people were going to buy them for like $19 and wear them probably 2 or 3 times, and then discard them by either throwing them away or donating them. And I realized that this was just unsustainable at a level that we were seeing it. And I started to feel really uncomfortable about my participation in the process of fast fashion. So I had the opportunity to pivot my career into Hong Kong, where I stopped producing fashion and started working for luxury fashion brands in their advertising and communications procedures all around the Asia Pacific region. And by working with these luxury brands, I realized that these brands were creating clothing that was not intended to be thrown away. Nobody's throwing away a Burberry jacket. There was some level of inherent resale to the items that were being created, and there was a market for that. However, it wasn't possible for every human on the planet to buy luxury goods, nor maybe would they want to. So there was an incentivization problem there. So when I repatriated to America, I became a professor at Belmont University in their fashion design program and really started studying sustainability. And during the pandemic, I started studying cryptocurrency. And I took a course on trading and really learned about blockchain technology and some of its capabilities. So when I came to Yale, I had done this research in crypto and happened to read an article in Rolling Stone magazine about music bands that were putting their albums out as NFTs on the blockchain. And yes, these NFTs, also known as digital assets, had behind the scenes video. They could be used as special passes to get into concerts. But what really caught my attention was the smart contract associated with the resale of these NFTs that could allocate a portion of the resale value back to the band. And I thought, what if we could do that with clothing, where an article of clothing is sold on a platform and a portion of that profit is automatically reallocated to not only the brand that created that garment, but also to the people who had owned it, so that they would be incentivized into buying quality clothing, taking good custodial care of that clothing, and then ultimately reselling it back into a community of people that would keep that article of clothing trading for as long as possible so that they could keep the royalties going for as long as possible. And the brand would also be incentivized in that same way to keep the royalties going for as long as possible and not create fast fashion garments that were intended to be discarded or thrown away, to bring the consumer back to the traditional retail transaction point, because that's the only place that brands get their profit. So coming to this realization, there was not a platform available that could also sell a digital asset and a physical asset at the same time. There were obviously e-commerce websites, and then there were NFT websites that could sell digital assets, but there was nothing that joined the two of those two things together. So that's where I went to City. I joined the Spring Accelerator and then ultimately was accepted into their summer fellowship program with funding. And last summer, we built a platform that did just that. And I spent the fall applying to incubators and accelerators. And this spring, I was accepted into an incubator with a credit card Visa, where we're working on developing corporate partnerships with clothing brands to develop that exact philosophy. So similar to Poshmark, we take 25% of commission for every resale transaction. But because we are a licensed software that works with the clothing brand, we don't just pocket that 25%. We actually split it up in between the brand, the previous owners, and the software platform. So in our model, a person could buy like a really great jacket in the year 2023, take good custodial care of that jacket, and then resell it back into a community of people that's going to keep that royalty allocation going for as long as possible. And all of a sudden, brands want to create good quality jackets, and consumers are willing to pay for good quality clothing because everybody knows that there's an opportunity to continue receiving royalties on those items far into the future. So some people might think that donating their clothing is the solution to this, but actually the donation apparel industry in the United States is so overwhelmed with cheap quality clothing that only about 15% of donations recirculate into the American economy, and 85% of clothing donations are offshored to places like Ghana and Chile, where the apparel supply has so overwhelmed the demand in those places that we have actually started seeing literal mountains and deserts of discarded clothing in unregulated landfills. Benefiting that situation, every single time we purchase secondhand clothing, we actually avoid up to 86% of the carbon emissions associated with new product manufacturing. By leveraging blockchain technology, we can incentivize and streamline the resale process, creating a triple bottom line success for profit, planets, and people. And I've always wanted to say this, and I say this so frequently whenever I go on a spiel about sustainable fashion, but thank you for coming to my TED Talk.